It is my pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker who will offer a wide-angle view on how Gen AI is transforming the media industry and what that means for both leadership and frontline editorial work. He serves as Strategy and Innovation Director at the Dutch public broadcaster NPO, and he's one of Europe's most respected voices in media innovation and digital strategy. Please welcome Ezra Eeman.
Hello, everyone. Hey, third time. So I feel I'm part of the family or part of the team. Very happy to be here. I also know this is the toughest crowd because you all know about AI. There's plenty of meetings where people actually don't know so much. So it's really great to be back here. And I think collectively we also picked up the pace, not only in our newsrooms, but also in our products. And even if it's still a lot experimental, I also see value and return on investment starting to come. I think last year, I'm seeing if this clicker works, last year I brought you to the fair. I don't know if you still remember, there was this hall of mirrors. And I guess we're still somewhere in the fun house, full of curved mirrors, because I feel that the image perfectly captures our current relationship with AI. It's not always clear if what we see and hear from these big tech companies is real or more a reflection of our hopes and fears of these products. And part of the challenge, I think, is that understanding AI's impact is happening at different speeds. Technology driven by AI companies moves fast in hype cycles. Users, however, they tend to have a more linear expectations. Once they adopt the technology, they start really expecting a lot of it. And then meanwhile, organizations adopt at a much slower pace, like following an S-curve. Initial hesitation, then gradual adoption, and then integration into their systems and their workflows. And I think this mismatch in speeds and expectations often leads to warped perspectives. On one hand, you have visions, and I don't know if you read this, AI 2027 paper predicting superhuman AI in just a few years' time, which will cause enormous disruptions and grow beyond our control if you follow the kind of negative path in the story. And on the other hand, you have experts that are suggesting that AI is just a normal technology, just like electricity or the internet, and it will find its way in our workflows like anything else. So my presentation today isn't necessarily trying to resolve these two positions. I think it's hard to resolve those. But I rather want to offer a few different lenses to look at AI in order to kind of better understand the landscape and where we are currently. And I want to focus on 5 key strategic shifts that I see unfolding. I'll talk about the shift of AI as a commodity, from magic to a mainstream tool, about the linear workflow giving way to a system of dynamic loops, how content is becoming fluid, adapting dynamically to users and the context, how answer engines challenge the notion of traditional journalism, and finally, how agent-to-agent frameworks could unlock new business models. But first, let's talk about how AI is rapidly moving from being perceived as magic to becoming a commodity. It's a bit a tale of models and men. And let me start by saying, and I think we all have seen these numbers, that we can no longer say that AI is just a hype. The numbers tell the story. ChatGPT has, if we can believe Sam Altman, 800 million weekly active users and 1 billion daily queries. In my own region, in Flanders, 68% of the 18 to 24-year-olds are now active users of AI assistants, and that's up 26% in just 1 year time. And perhaps the most telling for our industry is that in the US, AI subscriptions have surpassed new subscriptions among adults between 18 and 54-year-olds. So AI has become a utility in a record time, even if it's still far from perfect. And AI tools are so popular that they're kind of reshaping the web, even changing digital culture as we know it. A good example is the rise of so-called vibe coding, where anyone can create apps just by describing what they want, and they are flourishing really online. Or the rush on ChatGPT's new image feature, where the idea of copyright somehow seems to escape because we all wanted to make Ghibli-style pictures of ourselves. However, I think beneath the surface of this rapid adoption lies also a very uncertain economy. The cost of running these powerful models at scale, as they currently are, is immense. Companies like OpenAI are currently spending $2.25 to make $1 in return. And Sam Altman shared this week they're spending tens of millions of dollars for users just to say thank you and please and all these kind of things to their models. So this raises a serious question in terms of how sustainable these current business models are and how value will be captured in the AI ecosystem. Meanwhile, what was magical 2 years ago is rapidly becoming a commodity. Leading AI providers, both private and open source, are now incredibly close in performance on key benchmarks. There's no single best AI for everything at the moment. And at the same time, the cost of AI processing is dropping dramatically, making AI effectively accessible and affordable for everyone. For major AI players, this means that the competition is now increasingly on features. And you see they are rapidly copying these features from each other. Native integrations, conversational interfaces, canvas-based workspaces, connection to the web. As soon as one company launches one of these features, the others are quickly following. In the newest models, like the O3 model, many of these features are even being combined in an integrated model. And just as people are no longer choosing their car primarily for horsepower, but for the overall experience, we see the same thing happening in the AI market. It's rapidly moving to a place where raw model performance is not the main differentiator anymore, but it's more about the complete ecosystem and the user experience. And that's actually a territory where media companies, we understand it quite well, and where we can potentially compete more effectively. The second major shift concerns how newsrooms operate. For decades, the traditional flow of news has been largely linear, gathering information, writing, editing, publishing, and then moving on. AI is transforming that model into something that's much more dynamic and interconnected. Before diving into that, it's worth noting that adoption in the industry remains highly uneven. While 81% of journalists worldwide already say they're using AI in their work, only 13% across the whole world have an official AI policy in their workplace, according to a recent Thomson Reuters report. And there's also a clear divide between large and small organizations. About 52% of the large organizations have dedicated teams driving AI adoption, compared to just 23% of the smaller ones. And when it comes to effective implementation, only 28% of large organizations and 23% of the smaller ones have successfully embedded generative AI solutions. So there's a clear gap between the individual use and organizational strategy and implementation. Early AI adoption in newsrooms often started with simple tool sets, and we saw the evolution before as well, focused on these basic tasks, what we might call the AI buffet approach, like this example from Aftenbladet, which many of you in the room will recognize or maybe have it in your own newsroom. But this year we see a much broader exploration of use cases across the entire value chain. And this graphic that I made here illustrates the potential applications, from content enhancement to business operations to audience engagement, content transformation, and research and analysis. It's moving from single point solutions to a more systemic approach. And we're already seeing tangible results from early adopters. I could have put so many other results. Media has reduced the production time of local newsletters by 80%. Shipset has a transcription tool that saves 10,000 hours of their journalists' time. And at Reach, the speed of publishing breaking news has dropped from 9 minutes to just 90 seconds. But of course, the question is, should we just make the process more efficient, or does AI allow a whole new approach to creating and distributing news? Not as a one linear flow, but rather a set of connected loops, connecting AI, humans, audiences and systems with data sources, services, and tools. I'm expanding on a few of these loops. I think we all know AI in the loop. That's a bit the entry level. You could see it as the additional smart layer on top of current newsroom tasks. And Grammarly, a plugin like Grammarly is a good example. It doesn't just fix your spelling, but kind of improves your writing or your communication. There's another loop, the human in the loop, which is the reverse side or the flip side of this relationship, where AI is doing the most of the work, but there's still a human that supervises and guides it. And there's these workflows that go from text to generating video at scale with just a human before publication. But so far we saw mostly a dynamic between humans and machines. But in an AI-driven newsroom, I think systems in the loop will connect AI tools with other systems and with data sources, enabling automatic updates and responses. Regen AI, which is a tool that's out there currently, does this. It continuously updates breaking news items based on new information that comes into the system. And finally, AI offers, of course, the opportunity to bring the audience in the loop in a better way at every step of the reporting process. Because these tools track how people behave, how they react in real time, showing us what matters most to them. And an interesting example here was Google's Waves of Interest, which they rolled out during the American elections. It showed what people searched for during the election season, and it reveals their questions and the concerns they had during that specific period. And it created a new kind of feedback loop that could be used by newsrooms for editorial decision making. Newsroom tools are also becoming more proactive and agentic. And this is Adobe's latest action agents that they released in Photoshop. And it doesn't just wait for commands, but it actually proactively will suggest context-based suggestions based on the picture that you have, like auto-brighten or remove this. So it becomes more agentic and more proactive. And all these kind of new connected loops and these new systems will require a more collaborative and story-based organization. And work happens in parallel rather than one step at a time. Changing also, depending on how much a journalist learns a tool, that will depend how these loops will happen. Quality checks will be more important than ever, but partly they will be automated. And audience engagement will become an ongoing opportunity rather than something that just happens at the end after publishing. And the benefits, there should be more than that. The benefits should be more time on the reporting, boots on the ground, deeper journalism, but of course there's also a risk of depending too much on AI or losing the human touch. The third major shift, I think we already heard that, involves how content adapts to user needs and contexts. We're moving beyond static formats to experiences that transform and respond to how, when, and where they're consumed. And that has everything to do with this latest generation of AI models, which are increasingly multimodal. They're able to generate and reason across any type of media, text, and audio. And that means that anything can, in theory, become anything. Text becomes video, images become animations, and static content becomes dynamic. And this fluidity means that one well-researched story can have, in theory, countless forms to meet audiences wherever they are and wherever they want to use it. If we take a step back of that, we can see how transformative that really is. Because initially, media was like a train. It was a fixed format, it was scheduled, it was for mass audiences. With digital, it moves to an on-demand experience, a bit like an Uber. It was flexible and for individual consumption. But with AI, we are entering a new kind of fluid state, I would say, which feels much more like the holodeck. I'm not sure if you know it, the holodeck from Star Trek, that creates an experience around you. Content actively changes to meet you. It becomes interactive, it becomes more personal, and even something that you can help create. This, of course, completely changes the relationship between content creators and audiences. And the first wave of some of these things, and the first way that we see these experiments are already happening. Static articles are evolving into something much more multisensory. An article gets a voice, comes alive in images, gets animated, all dynamically generated from that original text. This is an example that comes from the Philippines, and it's worth exploring. It's a long read that was turned into a 30-minute documentary with a voiceover, a soundtrack, and animation by one journalist in 2 days' time. Visual journalism is also getting a boost. Tools like ChatGPT's new Create can instantly turn descriptions or data into maps, infographics, or comic strips that give a summary of the news. And while these tools are currently still very hard to control and they make a lot of mistakes, they do open new ways to think about content and to present complex information in a more visual way. Similarly, everything can become more auditive. Microsoft Copilot now generates daily update podcasts. Google Docs has now even integrated audio overviews, so every text that you have is potentially also an audio experience. And at the next level of these evolutions are stories that evolve in real time as new data and new developments are emerging, or articles that turn into a conversation. There's one example that I like particularly, and it's not so recent, but I really think they hit a nerve there, and that's Spotify's notion of daylists. That there are playlists that adapt to the time of day, the user context, and they turn content in something that's much more alive, much more responsive as an experience. And why stop there? What if the format and the interface could actually change depending on your need? I don't have time to read. Well, here's a short podcast about it. It's too hard to understand. Well, explain it to me like I'm 5. New entrants like Particle News, they revolve around that idea, the idea of need-based experiences, while Google is experimenting with interfaces that are generated based on your question. So if you have a weather question, it might actually trigger a weather app. And if you have a cooking question, it might actually trigger and generate a cooking instruction list. That leads me to a fourth major shift, and that's the rise of so-called answer engines. AI systems that directly respond to user questions rather than simply linking to sources. And this, of course, as we all know, fundamentally changes how information is discovered and is consumed. We're already seeing a significant shift in traffic. AI chatbot referrals to websites have grown from essentially 0 in last year, in February 2024, to 5.5 million by February 2025. But if you're really honest, this looks like a big growth. It's a fraction of what we currently have lost in traditional search, because in that same period there was a decline of 64 million referrals during that same period. So the reality is that users are beginning to get answers directly from AI rather than following links. And this shift is of course driven by the frictionless nature of AI assistant compared to traditional web experiences. Take this example. I'm traveling to the US this summer, and it's currently impossible to buy entrance tickets for some of the national parks. It has something to do with Trump. But what I wanted to know, and when I actually researched for it, I bumped into a paywall, while ChatGPT gave me the immediate answer I was looking for because it could synthesize it across multiple sources. And this, of course, poses an existential question. Are users looking to find news or answers? And what is it that we can deliver just beyond the summary? And the question is a pressing one, because AI subscriptions are growing fast, especially among young people. About 15% of the 18 to 24-year-olds and 18% of 25 to 34-year-olds are now paying AI services in the US, according to a recent survey, and that's more than those who pay for news in that age category. So one reason is, of course, that these AI services aren't just about news. They are about helping with shopping, with health questions, they're about education, they're about language translations, they're about generating graphics, And so you have a much broader relationship with these engines than with typical news subscriptions. And this shift happens also with our own core assets, our vast archives of quality content and trusted reporting, because it's often weakly defended online. AI companies train their models on web content, but also refer their answers on our content. And the reports show that these bad bots, that bad bot traffic is actually rising. And it indicates a massive surge in scraping activities, despite even efforts to block them. Because AI companies keep using new scrapers and constantly seeking fresh data to make their answers more relevant. And simultaneously, there's also a battle for the user interface, intensively happening at 3 levels. I think the first one is the app level, where you see new entrants like Particle News and Perplexity, offering news summaries and chat interfaces built on top of our content. At the browser levels, you see new browsers like Arc or specific plugins that can also transform any web content into a summary or something else. And then the real power grab is, of course, happening at the operating system level. AI is integrated into Windows, into iOS, into Android, into Amazon Alexa devices, and it sees everything that's in the system. Emails, searches, your documents, media habits. And from that information, it can proactively start serving you with news and information without even asking you if you need it. So the deeper the integration, the more these systems control, the more data they have access to, the harder it becomes for media to maintain direct audience relationships. One possible way out of it is, of course, having partnerships with these AI companies. Why compete when you can actually collaborate? The promise is more traffic, more revenue, some access to technology and data. But the reality is, of course, that not everybody is invited at the table. Not everybody has the same negotiation power. And even those, and I know there's a few of you here in the room who have the ear of these AI companies, know that they have a very limited capacity for partnerships, and their priority is clearly somewhere else. So given the risk of relying only on big tech, many news outlets and news organizations are trying to experiment with building their own AI tools and answer engines. And the Washington Post, builds Forbes, Times, The Wired, there's just a few examples here, there's many more, have launched chatbots or AI interfaces powered by their own content archives. And at the moment, they're more experimental than something else, but of course, they provide crucial learnings about what works, and it allows publishers to control these user experiences and the data. And one way, I think, to look at these experiments is as a new kind of smart flywheel, because it gives more higher value to your users. It generates new data from the questions that they pose. This data can then be improved, can be used to improve answers, which then creates, again, higher value. And if you add some memory to it, the interaction cycle becomes even more valuable. Remembering user preferences, questions, and behavior, creating a really interesting personal experience. Answer engines are potentially also new subscription funnels. Instead of the traditional discovery path, users engage through questions. They might receive a few preview answers. They might sign up for an account. They might have a few metered trial answers. And all of this could convert, again, to a new kind of subscription. And there's early data from companies like Miso.ai that suggests that this approach can actually drive a higher engagement and more conversions. But I think ultimately, in an AI-driven world where basic content creation and distribution, as we saw it, becomes easier, the key strategic question is, of course, how do you stand out? What makes us special? And I don't think it's about having all the answers. That's what the AI companies claim, that they have their answer engines for all the answers. I think it's about answering the right questions and leveraging our unique value. And this involves focusing on questions that require our ability to build genuine relationships with communities, our human judgment, our deep expertise, our ability to cover breaking news, our power to innovate and to create new value ourselves, our strong brands, our distinctive perspectives, our deep expertise. So there's a lot of things that we really can do still uniquely in these new environments. Because I think in an AI-driven world, being different and being relevant becomes much more important than just being a bit better or being a bit more complete. This brings us to the fifth and perhaps the last most transformative shift, which is still about to happen, and that's the potential of AI agents that can take over significant parts of the value chain. Because perhaps the biggest unknown is how quickly AI will go from being just a tool to something that's much more autonomous. Let's call it agents for now, even if everyone seems to have a different definition of what's an agent. But I think it are systems that can figure out how to complete tasks on their own. They can use tools, they can work with other AI systems, they can interact with their environment, they can remember their progress, they can learn from experience. I don't think we have these agents already fully there, but there are plenty of projects like Claude's computer use, the new Gemini models, OpenAI's operator that are pushing these capabilities forward. And these new agents potentially point towards new hybrid workflows that combine human judgment with AI speed. AI might spot trends and suggest story ideas, find relevant documents, select experts. Humans do interviews while AI transcribes and drafts content. Editors work on AI fact-checking. Then AI adapts the story to different platforms while it's also tracking and responding to audience feedback. So you get a new kind of hybrid teammate. And if we accept this as a possible future, we have to realize that AI tools are actually already reading our websites like we do. These tools visit sites, they fill out forms, they pull out information for people. And this has, of course, also profound implications. Publishers face a choice. Should you make your content work well for both human readers and machines, or ignore the trend? And if you ignore the trend, will you be left out the results? Do you optimize for AI, but maybe risk to weaken the relationship you have with your own readers? These developments could potentially also lead to entirely new marketplaces where user agents actually negotiate access with publisher systems. Imagine a situation where a user's personal AI assistant negotiates with a publisher's paywall, potentially arranging a specific micropayment or a dedicated subscription bundle that's much more tailored to their specific content needs. This could create new, flexible, and tailored monetization options, but also, again, it's a risk of disintermediation. We're almost at the end. You see a lot of evolutions, a lot of big shifts, and despite all these trends and all these analysis, I think we must acknowledge that there is a lot that remains uncertain. The media industry is currently making big bets, or has to make big bets, and that's in an environment where some of the critical questions are actually still unanswered. For me, one of these critical questions is actually the significant gap I still see between the vision that we have for AI in media and the current reality of the technology. We hope for high trust, 100%. We want excellent performance and we want it to be very affordable. But we still grapple with issues like bias, hallucinations, performance limitations, and the cost of the tech and the infrastructure and really making it work as a business case. Closing this gap, I think, will be vital if you really want to use it at scale on an industry level. It also requires newsrooms to make a choice. It's about balancing autonomy. How much autonomy do you want to have versus the control you give to an AI system? It's deciding between, do you just optimize your current linear workflows, or do you transform to these new dynamic loops? I think on one side you can automate and you can optimize current processes, but on the other you can embrace AI agents and hybrid production methods. I think fundamentally it's really about where you are, because there's no single right answer. I think the appropriate strategy really depends on your organization's vision, on your capabilities, and perhaps and certainly also on your audience. So I think I'll have to close with more questions than answers. And these are questions I still have. It's how will we protect and monetize content in an AI world? We have seen how the scraping is happening. How powerful will these AI models become, and how perfect do they have to be for us to work? Will people embrace AI, continue to embrace AI, because we see a very thin adoption, but really how far will they adopt it? Or will they resist certain changes once it starts hurting their jobs? What business models will prove to be sustainable? What about trust? And how will roles and skills need to change? Most of these, as you see, aren't technical questions. They're maybe not even questions only for the news industry, but they're broader challenges and many out of our direct control. What we can do here is, of course, exchange the knowledge, have the conversation, and learn from each other what works and what doesn't work. So I'm very happy that I'm here for the start of this conference. I'm looking forward to all the cases that will be presented and to the conversations tonight over a beer. Thank you. Hi. Do I stay?